Hello everyone, welcome to Grade Up. Myself Waris Siddiqui. Today again before you with a new topic of world history. Today our topic is new economic policy and formation of USSR. New economic policy and formation of USSR. What is USSR? Generally, people think that USSR and Russia are synonymous words. People think that USSR means Russia. It is not like that. USSR is not Russia. USSR means Russia plus some other countries who had all come together to create a federation, and that is called USSR. Russia was not USSR. Russia plus 15 other countries that were called USSR. So in this topic we have to see how USSR was created, and we have also to see what is the new economic policy of Lenin. New economic policy was the policy of Lenin for some time. So we will see that also. So first the question arises how it all began. So we will have to go back into history. Earlier Russia was a tsardom. That means the king of Russia was the Tsar, and Russia was in the pockets of the Tsar. Tsar gave no importance to the people. He gave no importance to public opinion. He was a very cruel person, and he considered Russia as his personal property, as something he can exploit and something he can use and something he can misuse. So that was tsardom. But against tsardom, vices started emerging, and these vices gradually became stronger and stronger. In 1905 also, there were vices against tsardom. There were the vices against Tsar. In 1905, Japan had defeated Russia. So people got an opportunity. They said that such a humiliating defeat is because of the Tsar. So they started protesting, and so they started criticizing the Tsar. So Tsar was under pressure, and so Tsar conceded some reforms. He gave some reforms, like he gave a Russian parliament which was called Duma. But tsardom continued. Tsar's rule did not come to an end. Only he gave a parliament, and parliament was never a real serious hindrance in the path of Tsar, because Tsar, whenever he faced any problem with the parliament, he would dissolve the parliament. He gave no importance to parliament. So parliament was no problem for Tsar. And people were very upset, and people were very angry, and people gradually started developing more and more severe feelings against the Tsar. And then came 1917, and in 1917 what happened, that the poor people, and including the workers, the poor people and the workers were protesting in Petrograd, and the Tsar, he asked the army to open fire on the people who were protesting, but the army refused, and army did not open fire, and the army sided, the soldiers, they sided up with the people. So this was a great crisis for Tsar. It was the a very big crisis, because the loyalty of the army can't be now taken for granted, because now army had developed anti-Tsarist sentiments and the army was becoming pro-poor. So ultimately Tsar was under a lot of pressure, and the elites of Russia and the top military generals also suggested him that now nothing can be done, not much can be done, and so Tsar, he stepped down from the throne, and after him there was no king, and so Tsardom came to an end. This is called the February Revolution. So Tsardom came to an end, and this is called the February Revolution. And when Tsardom came to an end, a provisional government was created. This provisional government was non-communist. It was not a government created by the communists. Liberals and socialists and other shades of opinion were represented in it. So provisional government also could not perform very good. The effectiveness of provisional government was also not visible to the people. People started having doubts about provisional government also, because the provisional government did not hold elections which it had promised, and provisional government also could not do anything about the multiple defeats that Russia was facing during the First World War. So what happened? The communists started feeling strengthened. The communists started becoming stronger and stronger, and more people started supporting the communists. And what happened? In November, according to the Gregorian calendar, in November, the Bolshevik Revolution took place, in which the communists overthrew the provisional government, and after overthrowing the provisional government, the communist government was established in Russia. Communist government was established in Russia. This is called the Bolshevik Revolution, and it happened in November according to the Gregorian calendar, and it is also called the October Revolution, because in Russia the Julian calendar was in use, and according to the Julian calendar it was October month. So it is also called October Revolution, and it is also called Bolshevik Revolution. So what did the Bolshevik Revolution result in? So Bolshevik Revolution resulted in the capture of power by the communists. So communists were controlling power now. Now the government was under the control of the communists. But then what happened? That the counter-revolutionary forces, anti-revolution forces, that means the non-communists, they started reorganizing themselves, and they started to oppose this revolution. Lenin was the leader of the Bolshevik Revolution, and Lenin was very much aware that a very serious type of counter-revolution is taking place. The communists may be wiped out completely, they will be eliminated completely. So Lenin took it very seriously, and of course for the communists it was a very serious matter, and it had to be taken very seriously. And so both the forces started a struggle against each other. So those who were the supporter of communists, they were called Reds, and those who were the opponents of the revolution, they were called the Whites. So it was a conflict between the Reds and Whites, and it is called the Civil War. And the Civil War continued from 1918 to 1921. During this Civil War, a lot of violence took place. Both the sides, they were engaged in a mortal combat. It was a do or die situation for them. and lot of violence and lot of ups and downs and lot of political conspiracies were there in this time. And in this period, because it was a war period, it was a civil war period, it was not a normal circumstance, it was not a normal period. So communists, they adopted a unique type of policies during this period. It was a special type of policies during the civil war, and that type of policies collectively are called war communism. So war communism, what were the features of war communism? So first feature was that the industry was nationalized. That means no private sector would be given importance, no private sector would be there, and all industry, almost all the industry was nationalized. So it was a great step. It was, for the communists, it was a master stroke, because then they would be able to get the support of the workers, because after the nationalization of industry, it is the workers who will have a greater role in these industries, and the workers will be empowered, and workers will have a say in the running of this industry, as it was envisaged at that time. It was war time, so all the things could not be done at that time, but at least that was envisaged. That vision was given to the workers, and the communists thought that workers will support them in this. The second thing was that forced requisition of surplus grain was carried out by the state, because during the civil war there was shortage of food and everybody had to be fed, and so surplus grain, there was surplus grain, but that was not coming out and proper distribution was not taking place in the economy. So the communists, they decided for forced requisition of surplus grain. Of course, during war communism, the normal rights were suspended. Normal rights were suspended practically. At that time, you can't say that I as an individual have certain rights and all. So many excesses were also done by the communists. So though the communists will not agree with it, they will not say that they carried out any excesses, but it's a fact, it's a historical fact that during war communism many excesses were done by the communists, and that is not to say that the whites did not carry out any excesses. The whites also perpetrated many types of excesses. So this was the period of civil war. And during the period of civil war, as I already told you, it was a do or die situation, and in these circumstances, the second person, the second biggest leader of the Communist Party at that time, he was Trotsky. The Trotsky organized the Red Army, and through the Red Army, a very effective campaign was carried out, and finally the whites were crushed, and so the communists had won the civil war. And what had happened during the civil war, there is one more angle to it. During the civil war, there was fighting not only in Russia but in adjacent territories also, which were part of the erstwhile Russian Empire. So not only in Russia but in non-Russian territories also there were disturbances and there were fighting, and the communists who had carried out the Bolshevik revolution, they helped the Bolsheviks in non-Russian areas, and these local Bolsheviks, they were also very happy to get the support of the Russian Bolsheviks, and these local Bolsheviks of non-Russian territories, they established Soviets, curtailed their opponents, and they curtailed the rebellious peasants through the policies of war communism. So civil war is not only including Russia but it is also including proper non-Russian territory. And what happened when the civil war was won, and because in those non-Russian territories already the Bolsheviks had become very strong and they had become victorious, so in the non-Russian territories they came together in 1922, and these non-Russian territories, now under the control of the Bolsheviks, they formed the Soviet Union. And in the beginning, in 1922, the Russian, the Transcaucasian, Ukrainian and Belarusian republics, they united and formed the USSR. So what do we see? USSR is not Russia. USSR is Russia plus other areas, is Russia plus other countries. Now, when USSR was created, then around that time, a little before that, Lenin realized that people are not happy with the communists because of the policies of war communism. There was heavy criticism and there was psychological opposition to the policies of war communism and the total elimination of private property in many sectors. So Lenin thought that right now communists are not very strong. The communists need time to consolidate their power. Already they have already won the civil war, but still their situation is precarious, and so they should move gradually, and in the beginning say they should try to consolidate the power in Russia, because if they will take any extreme step right in the beginning, there will be public opposition and properly communism will not be able to establish itself. So some time was needed, some time to consolidate the position was needed. So Lenin thought of giving some relaxations, and these relaxations were manifested in his new economic policy, which was there from 1921 to 1928. The new economic policy was introduced by Lenin, and it was a partial return of a free market and private property. It was a partial return, it was not a total return. So, and this policy, this relaxation, this going back from the policy of war communism, that did help, because the civil war might have been won, but severe economic crisis had taken place, and when the new economic policy was introduced, it led to economic recovery, and all the economic problems that had crept up during the civil war, that they gradually started fading away. In new economic policy, most agriculture, retail trade and a small scale light industry was given to private ownership. So private property was given concessions, private property was given a space. So let me tell you the Marxist theory. If you might have read Karl Marx, then Karl Marx is very clear, and the communist theory, no matter which school of communist theory, all communists agree on one point, that private property is a negative thing, and private property creates the profit motive, and private property creates greed, and it dehumanizes, and private property leads to the exploitation of the people, exploitation of the working class. So according to the communist theory, private property is a negative thing, it is not a good thing. And so when relaxation was given by Lenin, that was going away from the classical Marxist position. The pure Marxist position is that there should be no private property. But here concessions were being given because 2-3 reasons were there, which we have already discussed why this concession was being given. Because first, the communists needed time to consolidate. Second, economic problems had been created, so they wanted recovery. And third, they wanted to move to a communist economy gradually. They don't want to do it at once. So private ownership was accepted in most of agriculture, in most of retail trade, and a small scale light industry. And I should tell you later on when the Stalinistic model would be in place, so this allowance to private property would not be there. This freedom to private property to operate would not be there. So under the Stalinistic model, even TV shops, even barber shops, even small restaurants, they can't be opened, they can't be under private property. So Stalinistic model later on when Lenin would die and when Stalin would come to power. So when Stalin would come to power, he would say that new economic policy was only a stopgap solution. New economic policy was temporary in nature, and so we are moving towards a more communistic society, and he would eliminate all private property. But new economic policy, it gave a space to private ownership and management, and most agriculture, retail trade, a small scale light industry, they were under private ownership and management. But the state retained control of heavy industry. State retained control of heavy industry, transport, banking, and foreign trade. I should tell you here, because we all are from India, that Nehru was influenced by the new economic policy of Lenin, and UPSC has asked this question also. Few years back UPSC asked this question, and where it tried in the question, it was said that Nehru's mixed economy was influenced by the new economic policy of Lenin, and that's a fact. Nehru was a close observer. Nehru had studied about the new economic policy. He was also aware of the other models of left communist economy, and Nehru was very much influenced by the new economic policy. So in state control, the heavy industry was there, transport was there, banking was there, foreign trade was there, and the peasantry were allowed to own and cultivate their own land while paying taxes to the estate. So new economic policy has a very special place in communist theory. In communist theory, it was an experiment. New economic policy was an experiment, and since communist theory doesn't accept private property, so this experiment is still very much relevant to a student of Marxist philosophy, because he can see the various dimensions of the debate, and he can see that how new economic policy tried to create a middle ground, tried to create an intermediate situation between pure capitalism and pure communism. So this is the middle ground. What happened due to new economic policy? Due to new economic policy, economy stabilized and Soviet people recovered from years of war, civil war, and governmental mismanagement. So many economic problems were solved. But in 1924, Lenin died, and after the death of Lenin, Joseph Stalin came to power. Initially, there was some struggle for power, and finally in 1928, Stalin emerged as the supreme leader. Stalin suppressed all political opposition to his rule, and he became supreme in 1928. So when Stalin became supreme, so in USSR, what would be adopted? So only Stalinism will have the dominance, Stalinism will be implemented. the Stalinistic view about economy, about state, about communism and all, there can be various models. In fact, there are many communists who don't agree with the Stalinistic model even today. They say that people confuse Stalinism with Marxism, and they say Stalinism is not Marxism. But right now that is not the main debate. Right now we should see that when Stalin came to power when he became supreme in 1928, he abandoned the NEP and he adopted new sets of policies. So under the new sets of policies of Stalin, Stalin re-nationalized much of the economy and initiated a centrally planned economy, and private property was again gone, private property was curtailed, and there was a straight controlled industrialization and forced collectivization. Earlier peasants were allowed to cultivate crops in their own land. So private property, full private property was recognized. But what did Stalin do? Stalin went for collectivization. That collective farms should be there, so that all farmers are not working on their individual farms, but all the land is being taken as a single entity, and all the people, they are working on it collectively. So collectivization was done, but it was not something which peasants should accept very freely. So as we see in history, when we go deeper and we research, we find that Stalin carried out used lot of force and lot of violence also to enforce this, and actually this collectivization in many of its aspects was forced collectivization. Sometimes it was voluntary also. Many peasants voluntarily went for collectivization, that is also true, but in many cases and in large number of cases it was forced collectivization. So this is the story of USSR, how it was created and what is the new economic policy, what was its impact and what happened after the NEP, and where is its place in the overall history of world and in the overall Marxist theory. So if you have any questions, you can ask. I'd be happy to answer them. Any questions? Yeah, Shravani asked something and I didn't get the question. Sir, why new economic policy is due? Yes, I didn't get the question. Why economic policy is due? What does it mean? I don't know. Maybe you are asking something and I am not able to understand it. Yes, please ask. What are you asking? Thank you. Thank you, Ashneet. It's a pleasure that you are a nice student and you are liking my classes, and you seem to be a good student too, and prepare nicely, and of course you will clear the exam. Okay. So Diksha is asking, who first developed solar calendar? Are they Sumerians? Yes, Sumerians also had conception of solar calendar. Yes. So what is current perspective of new economic policy? Present India's new economic policy. So it is going in the capitalistic direction. The socialist element is being reduced and it is going in the capitalistic direction. I am not saying that Indian economy is influenced by communism. That would be wrong to say. Indian economy is not influenced by communism. Indian economy is influenced by socialism, not communism. So communism is much more extreme. So Indian economy can be compared to a socialist economy, and in fact in the preamble it is called a socialist economy. So that is what we have to see. So new economic policy is a new direction, is another direction. After 1991 the direction started. More and more elements and more doses of capitalism are being introduced. Ashneet is saying I am somewhat nervous, so that's a good sign that you are studying. Only those who study, they only those who are serious, they get nervous, because there are many who don't study and um, mm, mm, it is and they don't feel nervousness at all. They are carefree all the time. Diksha, actually I don't know very much about calendars, frankly speaking, and Mesopotamian history has, I know, I'm my specialization in history is not Mesopotamian and Egyptian civilization, but I know certain things. And so far as I guess that there was the idea of a solar calendar. How much developed or it was just rudimentary, that I don't know. So sorry for that. You can check it on Google. Okay, now we should end the class. And Ashneet, uh, keep preparing, working hard, and all the students who are there, keep working hard. And if you will work hard and you will do a smart work, it is it is almost sure that you will crack this exam. So thank you everyone, and goodbye, take care.